Welcome, everybody. It's my pleasure, or I should say an honor, to be here today to introduce you to the Kisti-Cwts and the Leiden ranking more specifically. So my name is Mark Nijssel, and here you see my contact details. I've been working at Kisti-Cwts now for 13 years, and I'm part of the Leiden ranking team at the Kisti-Cwts. Kisti-Cwts, the abbreviation, literally translated to English, stands for the Center for Science and Technology Studies. It's one of the institutes of the Faculty of Social and Behavioral Sciences at Leiden University. And the institute studies scientific research and its connection to scientific research, innovation, technology, and society. But in addition to doing these more fundamental, basic research types, we also provide services to societal stakeholders. And these are in the field of research evaluation, research management, and science policy. So the typical societal stakeholders we interact with are other universities, national research institutes, governments, and funding bodies across the world. Below, you see three major hallmarks listed of the Kisti-Cwts. And the Leiden Manifesto was already mentioned. That's produced in the Nature 2015. Together with some fellow research institutes, we coined 10 very important principles or guidelines for the research evaluation process. In addition, we wrote the Responsible Metric Report for the European Commission. This was a report on how to construct metrics, scientometrics, in a responsible manner, but also how to use them and interpret them in a responsible way. And finally, of course, and I think that's what we are most famous for across the globe, that's the Kisti-Cwts Leiden ranking, and that's what we're here for today, to talk also about that. First, I thought it would be nice to place the research collaboration between Kisti and Kisti-Cwts in a relational timeline between the two countries, because it goes way back, more than 400 years. And it's really quite an interesting story, I thought. So we go way back to 1575. That's when Leiden University was established, our university. It was a gift from William of Orange, considered our first king, because the city of Leiden was able to repel a siege by the Spaniards successfully. So we got our university. And now I make a jump of a little over 75 years, and that's the remarkable bit of the story. Hendrik Hamel, a Dutch accountant, was on its way from Batavia City in Indonesia to Dejima in Japan. Got shipwrecked, ended up at the Jeju shores, and was taken to the governor. He was in a country he thought unknown. But to his surprise, and can you imagine his surprise, suddenly this interpreter was called. And that was Jan Jans Weltevree, a Dutch guy who apparently had already been living in Korea for 26 years by that time. So after 13 years, Hendrik Hamel returned to the Netherlands and wrote down all the details about his experience in Korea. So he was the first one to make Korea known in the Netherlands and also in Europe. And I think the funny or interesting bit about this story is that Hendrik Hamel became very famous, and many people think or believe that he was the first Dutch person to visit Korea. But it's actually Jan Jans Weltevree, who also remained in Korea and eventually, of course, died of old age. Now I'm going to make a big step forward. 1962, the Korean Institute of Science and Technology Information was established, so much older than the Kisti-Cwts. We were established in 1989, formerly known as the Lisbon Center. Next step, small intermezzo, but also one collaboration I think the Dutch are very proud of, was that Guus Hiddink, a famous Dutch football coach, actually became the manager of the national Korean team in 2001. And with the team together, they achieved the semifinals in the 2002 FIFA World Cup, which was really a big achievement. They did it far better than the Dutch teams in those days. Next step in the timeline is 2022, when the first formal research collaboration agreement was signed between Kisti and the Kisti-Cwts. And now here, 2025, we are here gathered together today for the joint launch event on the Leiden ranking for Korean institutions. So the first contacts relating to the research collaboration between Kisti and Kisti-Cwts were established by Jin-Seo Park, one of the senior research staff at Kisti in the early 2000s. Throughout the years, the contacts remained, and they finally got formalized in a collaborative research agreement between the two entities in 2002, and its focus is on international joint research on core technology development for global R&D analysis and monitoring. So this was about the relational background between the two organizations. Now I want to briefly introduce you to the Kisti-Cwts Leiden ranking. Now, at this moment in time, we have two formal Leiden rankings. One called the Traditional Edition, which is based on the Web of Science core collection, and one Open Edition, which is based on the Open Alex database. The Leiden ranking differs considerably from the other international ranking systems out there. And the most important part is that we do not work with a composite indicator, because we think that's fundamentally wrong. All the other ranking systems, they take different perspectives of the research performance or the performance of a university and combine it into one single indicator value, a ranking position in a ranking. And that's of course very wrong. When you look at teaching, that is something completely different than, for example, research or the performance of a university being able to attract finances from funding bodies. So it's fundamentally wrong to combine various performance dimensions into a single indicator. So for that reason, Kisti-Cwts provides a multi-dimensional perspective on the university performance. You will see that there's 4 main dimensions in the Leiden ranking system. Also, we keep size-dependent and size-independent indicators clearly separated in our process. And again, that's where we see that other ranking systems go wrong. What they do is that they mix size-dependent performance indicators and size-independent performance indicators again into a single ranking value. And that's of course very strange. We always use the example if you want to look at the wealth of a certain country. You can look at the GDP at the country level or the GDP divided by the number of inhabitants. But now if you combine those two figures into a single value, you get completely lost on what you're looking at. So we think that's very problematic with the other ranking systems. And size-dependent and size-independent performance indicators should be clearly separated in your ranking system. The Leiden ranking is clearly focused on research, so not on teaching. We only look at the research performance and then more specifically from a bibliometric perspective. So it's purely based on bibliometric indicators. No survey data are being used, nor do universities need to provide us with any data from themselves. We do it all. We collect the data, calculate the indicators. And to do so, we employ a very high-quality bibliometric methodology about which I will tell later on this afternoon. But it's really a place, the Leiden ranking, where we introduce the latest developments in our bibliometric analysis. So in that sense, it's really a flagship project for our institute. And finally, the Leiden ranking provides multiple views. So in addition to just the straightforward list ranking, we also provide scatter plots or geographical presentations of the universities included in the ranking system. So as I said, we have now 2 formal Leiden ranking editions, the Traditional Edition and the Open Edition. The Traditional Edition is based on our in-house enhanced version of Web of Science and now contains close to 1,600 universities from 77 different countries. We collect articles and reviews in what we call a core publication set. We typically take a 4-year period of analysis, so publication output is collected for the years 2020 until 2023, with counting citations up to and including the year 2024. For the traditional edition, fractional counting is employed to meet the threshold to make it into the Leiden ranking. So if a university has 800 core publications counted fractionally in this 4-year period, it makes it into the Leiden ranking. For the open edition, we follow a slightly different procedure. In the open edition, close to 3,000 universities from 120 countries are listed. It's based on our in-house enhanced version of OpenAlex. Here we take a slightly different approach to come to a core publication set. The reason is that the document type and source type classification in OpenAlex is different from the Web of Science. So here we select articles, reviews, book chapters, appeared in sources, journals, book series, and conferences. Of course, we take the same period of analysis, but here a university has to meet the threshold of 1,500 core publications and non-core publications. And full counting is employed to make it into the Leiden ranking open edition. Hence the difference in the number of universities included in this edition as compared to the traditional edition. So here you see a pie chart of the geographical spread of the universities or the countries contributing to the Leiden ranking. You see that China and the United States are by far the largest contributors in terms of numbers of universities included in the Leiden ranking open edition. And this relationship just recently flipped in the most recent years. So for a very long time, the US was contributing the most universities to the Leiden ranking system, but we see a clear rise of the Chinese universities entering the Leiden ranking system, more and more producing Web of Science index publications. You see that also Korea makes it into the top 15 major contributors to the Leiden ranking in terms of numbers of universities, with 3% of the universities in the total Leiden ranking traditional system. Here you see a pie chart for the geographical spread for the open edition. And mind you, it clearly changes because also the non-core publications are included. And you see now that the share of both China and the US is greatly reduced, and also new countries appear in the top 15, for example, Indonesia and Russia. And you see by far also a significant portion of other countries from across the globe. It's important to note one minor difference between the two ranking systems, that the open edition so far does not provide gender indicators, unlike the traditional edition. So with that, my first introduction to the Kisti-Cwts and the Leiden ranking comes to an end. So I would like to welcome you again to this first joint event by Kisti and Kisti-Cwts. We look back on a very fruitful and happy collaboration in the past 3 years, and we definitely hope so to continue to do so in the years to come. And if there are any questions, please do not hesitate to ask. There will be an extensive Q&A session at the very end of this afternoon. Thank you.